What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Burke aka Dansg08 here, and I wanted to make this video to celebrate the channel hitting 50 million views across all of the videos I've made since the year 2008, which is a really incredible milestone. When you think about it, 50 million clicks across everything that I've made is really awesome. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And thank you all, of course, for all of your views over the years, and those of you guys that have viewed stuff multiple times and that have just generally contributed to this amazing milestone that the channel has managed to hit. So for this video, we're going to be taking a look at the 5 most viewed videos of all time on the Dansg08 channel, and just showing you guys these videos, what their titles are, what they're about, so that you guys can see the 5 biggest contributions to that 50 million milestone that I have on the channel. What you're going to notice is that there is a theme here, and a lot of the videos that are in the top 5 are going to be movie versions, marathon edition movie versions of video games. And I mentioned it before when talking about the history of my channel, that once I got into this whole space in like 2012, I think it was, when I first started doing them, the movie versions of video games was something that really kind of took the channel to a whole new level in terms of views and subscribers and all that kind of thing. So you're going to see in plain detail here why the movie versions of the games that I've done have been so important to the channel, and why they still today continue to contribute so much, even though I don't really make them anymore. So at number 5 we have the Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns Marathon Edition movie. This one was uploaded on the 22nd of February 2014. I think one of the main reasons why this one did well was because it was the only one of the trilogy that I actually uploaded during its release time. So this game was released in 2014, and I was one of these people that just got the game as soon as I could, and I just went to work on the movie version. I didn't do a commentary playthrough for it. I will be doing that for the channel eventually, but at the time I was big on the movie versions. They were doing well, they were getting a lot of views, and I was like, I want to crank out the movie version for this as soon as possible. So it was a period of about 2 weeks of just like hard work, where I was just grinding out the episodes and building up the movie version for this one. And I think because of the timing and the fact that it was released quite close to the release of the game, that's probably one of the reasons why it ended up doing so well. It ended up being a 9-hour marathon. It was the longest of the 3 Final Fantasy XIII games, much longer than Final Fantasy XIII-2. And it was some of my best work to date, I would say, because the game was very difficult to play in a kind of movie-fied format. So those of you guys that have seen some of my content before, I don't play the game as it's intended to be played at times, because I wanted to look more cinematic than like a gaming walkthrough or something like that. One of the main struggles of this game was the fact that it always had a running clock, and you basically had like 24 hours in which to complete the entire storyline. Now, usually if you were to play it conventionally, this would mean a lot of going backwards and forwards between different story arcs at the same time. But in terms of movie flow, that wasn't something that I really wanted to do. So let's say, you know, you reach a point in the game where you're supposed to be struggling, you're supposed to leave that alone, go to another segment of the game, maybe get a little bit stronger, complete some other part of the story. Then when you're stronger, revert back to original bit and continue the story, etc. For me, I didn't really have that luxury for a lot of the segments. So if there's a boss battle coming up, I can't just be like, okay, I'm just going to leave that boss battle alone and go to another part of the game. I had to grind it out and beat that boss in order to keep that story flowing. So in that sense, it was a pretty difficult playthrough. And alongside this, we had like a lot more visual elements on screen. And for someone that wants to make movies out of video games like me, especially when you're playing on the PS3 and you can't mod it or anything like that, this was a massive burden, because you have the clock running constantly, and you sometimes need to pull tricks on the viewer to make it seem like you're going through a linear flow of time, even if you've actually kind of gone backwards and forwards sometimes. So I had to do a lot of masking, putting in like different clock times to what was actually shown in the game, and things like this. So I learned a lot from the experience. It was one of the most heavily edited movie versions I've made up until that point. So in terms of my skills, like using the editing program and stuff, it was a lot of fun. And here it is today, the 5th most viewed Dansg08 video of all time. So it was one of the best movie versions I think I made. So I'm very happy with it. And there it is in 5th place. Number 4 is the Bioshock Infinite Marathon Edition video game movie. Now, this one I would say is the first video game movie of all time where the channel actually had a noticeable like viewing spike, and it got a lot of attention. So the story behind Bioshock Infinite was that I was starting to do like movie version work on like Final Fantasy X, I think at the time. I had that one done, and I was trying to work on a few others, but I'd never made a movie version for a non-Final Fantasy game up until that point. Now, Bioshock was always a franchise I had a lot of love for, and I was really looking forward to the release of Bioshock Infinite. Now, how it worked was I noticed that the Final Fantasy movie versions were doing quite well, and I was very lucky this time where I got the game delivered to me early. And I would say in my gaming life, I've never really had a situation where the game's been delivered about 4 days before release to me, when it was just like a regular pre-order. So when the game arrived, I think it was Thursday the game arrived, and the official release was on Tuesday. So I was like, okay, we've got a big chance here. I've got the game early. So we're talking about March the 27th, 2013. Again, back in those days, this is what I would consider the prime of video game movies on YouTube. It was a time when channels like me could really get the maximum amount of reward for the effort that they put into their videos. So I spent about 50 hours on the edit for the Bioshock Infinite movie version, and that was across, I would say, about 4 days. So I was averaging about 12 to 13 hours a day of just straight up playing and editing for this game. And back then, it was 2013, so my skills were not what they are now. My hardware was not what it was now. I think the program that I was using was Cyberlink Power Director or something like that, which is it's a good kind of beginner program, but compared to programs like Final Cut, Premiere Pro, Sony Vegas and all that stuff, it's definitely a step down, and I didn't have the same tools at my disposal. So I had a much older laptop that I was using that wasn't very good in that sense, so it was quite a struggle. But eventually I made it through, and it was something that I could upload on release day, so I was really, really happy about that. So then what was interesting was after I uploaded it, I wasn't really expecting any kind of major fireworks from it. I thought, it will do well, but it's not going to be get over 1 million views or anything like that. And it got interesting when I saw that there was this article that was posted on Kotaku about the movie version I made. Now, Bioshock Infinite is a game that's narratively very interesting, and because of the narrative itself, a lot of people were very intrigued about the game. There was a lot discussed about the ending and the themes and what it all meant and all that kind of stuff. So I think when you have all of that and you add to it the fact that someone's gone to the effort of condensing the entire walkthrough of the game into a cinematic version, this caught the attention of a lot of game publishers because, once again, in 2013, video game movies weren't really that huge. There weren't that many people doing it, and the people that were doing it, they weren't that well known at the time. My channel was way, way smaller. I think I had maybe 10k subscribers, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, I'm not quite sure. But the channel was much smaller back then. So a lot of gaming publications jumped on this movie version. They were like, fan creates cinematic version of Bioshock Infinite, and there were lots of articles written about it. The one that was written on Kotaku was the one that was actually the most viewed one, and there was a really noticeable, I think it got me tens of thousands of views just from that article alone, because a lot of people were curious about the work that I did. And for that reason, Bioshock Infinite just went crazy, especially in the early days. The first few months of the Bioshock Infinite movie were, I'd only ever seen that happen on 2 other videos, which I'm obviously going to discuss as we move further on. But Bioshock Infinite, for the movie making phase of my channel, was a revelation, and I had a wonderful time making it. It's one film that I'd love to kind of remake because my options were very limited at the time. There was a time constraint because I needed to get the video out before release day, which ultimately worked out for the best. I mean, if I released this 2 or 3 weeks after the release, it was going to have nowhere near the same impact, so I think I made the right decision there. But I had to play it in 720p. I chose to crop out the HUD, which meant that we were down to an even lower resolution than 720p. My editing skills were not what they are now, and my software wasn't as good, etc, etc. So I kind of would have liked to have redone that movie with modern day standards like graphics and with my editing skills of today and all that kind of stuff. But, time constraints, and I just know that it's not going to get the same amount of attention as it did in 2013. So I kind of have to leave it up there. But most people that have watched it have enjoyed it. I got great feedback from it, so it's a video that I've always been very proud of and a meaningful one for the channel. At number 3 is a very, very important video for the channel that you guys would have heard about a bunch of times, but it's my flying Bugatti Veyron Gran Turismo 5 overtake video. I'll give a quick summary because people might not have seen that video or heard me talk about it before. But this is the first video on the Dansg08 channel that ever went big in any kind of way. So it was the year 2010, I was in my second year of university. At this stage I was kind of making YouTube videos, but it wasn't something I was doing very regularly. I wasn't really kind of striving to do it in any kind of professional way or a high level or anything like that. I was just kind of having fun. Whenever I had an idea for something I wanted to upload, I would upload it and all that kind of thing. So when Gran Turismo 5 came out, it was the first Gran Turismo game that was released while I had a YouTube channel, and it was a game that I was looking forward to for a long time because Gran Turismo was a franchise I'd always loved ever since my childhood, and I'd played through 1 to 4 and I'd always really enjoyed it. And once it did arrive, I decided to try and like upload a few things from it. And because again, I got the game, I think maybe it was like a day before release or something like that. It wasn't like Bioshock Infinite where it was like 4 days, but I think maybe it was like a day or 2 days before release. And you can't really, I didn't really want to do like a walkthrough of the game, like, you know, a career mode walkthrough, because I felt like it's too far away from what I normally do and it's not really my style. So I thought that'd be quite boring. But it was the first Gran Turismo on the PS3. And that's one thing that I wanted to take advantage of. So I wanted to make a few videos that showcased some of the cool cars, some of the cool tracks in there, some of the weather effects, the license tests and all that kind of stuff. So I made a series of videos for it. And because the game was new and Gran Turismo 5 was really, really awaited and anticipated, those videos ended up doing really well. So I think it was the first time I started to see tens of thousands of views on any particular video that I'd made before. So that was like a really cool time. And it was really like a noticeable spike in views for the channel. But I think about 2 weeks after I first started making these Gran Turismo 5 videos, something happened during my gameplay which I thought was really interesting. Now, for those of you guys that don't know, the Bugatti Veyron was and still is one of the most famous cars of all time. It broke the speed record for a production car that you could like just drive on the street regularly. So it was really famous because of that. It cost, I think it was like $1.6 million or something like that at the time when it was released. And there was just a lot of hype and a lot of interest surrounding it. Now, this car was a car that you could use in Gran Turismo 5, and because of its insane speed, it could do things that would break Gran Turismo 5's physics. Now, during a race, I noticed that there was a bit where there's a bit of a hill, and if you approach that hill quickly enough, the Bugatti Veyron's acceleration is so quick that the car will literally fly off the top of the hill. But it's not one of these things where it will fly like, you know, maybe a foot off the ground. It literally like elevated to quite an insane level that wouldn't normally be possible under like regular physics standards given the speed of that car. So I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And I thought, what if I can time it in a way where if I'm racing against a car that's in front of me, I can quite literally leapfrog over the top of it and overtake it in that way, because that's something I'd never seen in Gran Turismo before. It's something I'd never done in Gran Turismo before. So I was like, if I can pull it off with this car, that might be quite an interesting little video. So I did it. And it's not something that's particularly difficult to do or anything like that, but it was interesting and no one else had done it before on YouTube anyway. So I did it, I uploaded it, it was like a 59-second video. I thought, you know, just a little bit of fun, something that people probably haven't seen before, and just went to sleep. I wasn't expecting very much from it. Then I woke up the next day and it was like, it had like 28,000 views in one night. And I was like, what the hell? Because the videos I had before, they were like maybe, at this point, there were maybe like a few thousand views. Maybe the best one was like 10,000, something like that. And in one night, I saw 28,000. I was like, what the hell's going on? So I decided to try and Google like the title of the video and stuff. This was the first time I'd ever tried to do something like this. And I noticed that there was like these South American video game blogs that had started sharing it and all this kind of thing. I mean, it's 2010, so YouTube wasn't really at the peak that it was a few years later and what it is today. So seeing this, a video made by me that had like probably less than 500 subscribers at the time, making a video that got this much popularity in this little time was just absolute insanity. And it just absolutely launched off, like no pun intended, but that video just took off, man. And it was tens of thousands of views every day. And it just kept going and going and going and going. Because I think because it was a Bugatti Veyron and that car was so popular on YouTube, and because of the game, it just kept going, man. And I think it reached the first million views very, very quickly. Then the second million was quite quick as well, but then there came a time when there was like a massive slump in views. And I think for like the last maybe 4 or 5 years, it's literally just trickled. So it got to about 2 million, 2.2 million, and then it's like someone just kind of pulled the switch and suddenly it just stopped getting watched after that. But because it got so many views so quickly, it's going to be on that top 5 list for quite some time, because Final Fantasy XIII 3, the video that's in 5th place, has 1.4 million views, and it's about 1 million below this flying Bugatti Veyron overtake. So there it is, that's the video that's in 3rd place on my list. It's a very, very important video for the channel's history, and one that will probably be there for quite some time. Right then, next up is number 2 on the list, and it's going to be another movie version. So one of the reasons I loved having Gran Turismo on this list is because it broke up the other movie versions I'm going to be sharing with you. So in 2nd place is Final Fantasy XIII, the movie, the Marathon Edition. This was uploaded on the 8th of December 2012. It was one of the first Marathon Edition movies I ever put on the channel. Marathon Edition movies, especially in the year 2012-2013, used to, I think, get a lot of attention just because of the runtime. So I uploaded all of these episodically before making a marathon edition, and even though the episodes themselves individually did fairly well, there's just something about seeing an 8.5-hour video that makes you want to click on it. I think it was something that's almost a little bit clickbaity back in those days, because in the year 2012, 2013, there weren't that many 8.5-hour videos about video games, and videos that were that long, they were more like, you know, loops or that kind of thing. So seeing an 8.5-hour movie, I think, attracted a lot of people's attention. They wanted to find out what it was all about. Because it's going to overlap a lot with 13.3, which I've already talked about, I'm not going to repeat myself in that sense. Final Fantasy 13, the movie, has almost hit 3 million views, which is really cool, and it still continues to get viewed quite a lot today, which is really, really nice as well. So it was a really good project. I was really happy with it. Again, because one of my earlier efforts, it might not be edited as well as like stuff from 2015 onwards, but considering the time when I made it, and the game lent itself quite well to being turned into a movie, I don't really have any major issues with it. I managed to record it in 1080 as well, and it looks really lovely on the PS3, so I think it looks okay. Can be better, of course, if it was remade today, but considering the time when I made it, very, very happy with it. Almost a 3 million views and still going strong. So there's your number 2 video, Final Fantasy 13, the movie version marathon. Time for the most watched video of all time on the Dansg08 channel. Now, it's a little bit interesting because most of you guys who are watching this video will be subscribed to the channel or will be viewing the channel because of your interest in Final Fantasy and the Final Fantasy content I make. So one of the things that I'm not always that happy about, it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, but a lot of people consider this channel a Final Fantasy channel. And this is of course true to some extent, but I've always tried my best to let you guys know that I do a lot of stuff outside of Final Fantasy as well. And I have like a ton of playlists that are not Final Fantasy. I have more non-Final Fantasy playlists than I have Final Fantasy playlists. So on the one hand, it's really nice. I think it's a compliment, the fact that people consider this channel such a great place to go for Final Fantasy content, but I've always made other stuff along the way, whether it was like 2009 or whether it's 2019. So in that sense, it's kind of cool that the most viewed video of all time on the channel by a huge margin is not Final Fantasy. 4.5 million views ahead of the second place spot, sitting on almost 7.5 million views, is my Last of Us movie version. The Last of Us is a game that I've talked about a lot on the channel, and it has such big significance for my career on YouTube and everything I did on the channel, because 2013 was a huge year for me. I mean, I already talked about the Bioshock Infinite movie that racked up a lot of views. I'd uploaded the marathon version in 2012 December, and by 2013 that had started to get some attention as well, and things were starting to really get rolling. I mean, I had got partnered in mid-2012, but it was kind of just very, very baby stages, and 2013 was the first year where I was like, I am really seeing like some legitimate action on this channel. And it was probably the year where I really thought, okay, now I need to start trying to really go more professional with this. And The Last of Us was a huge difference in terms of views. So why is The Last of Us the highest viewed video by such a huge margin? I think the explanation is quite simple. It's twofold. One is because it's The Last of Us, and The Last of Us is one of the most popular games of all time on PS3. It sold incredibly well. It got, the critical acclaim that it received and all that kind of stuff. So The Last of Us, in and of itself, is a huge game anyway, and that nothing can take that away. But I think the main factor here is the timing. Those of you guys that have watched my content before and have heard me talk about like the business of YouTube and that kind of stuff, I've always said that for the kind of things that I do, for video game related content, video game movies and things of that nature, timing is almost everything. And the reason why there's no videos from like 2015 onwards here is because of this timing. So if you notice, every video that I've talked about are videos from like 2014 backwards. I think the most recent video of all of the ones I've shared is from February 2014. That's from 5 years ago. So there's not even something from 2 years ago that managed to get over 1.4 million views, or 3 years ago for that matter. The reason for that is timing. So the way it works, you guys as viewers will know this as well. If there's a hotly anticipated game coming out, let's say The Last of Us, you guys are going to be all over YouTube trying to see content from it. You want to see gameplay, you want to see trailers, you want to see reviews and all that kind of stuff. So if a game comes out on I think it was the 13th of June it came out. I'm not 100% sure, but it was either the 13th or the 14th of June or something like that. You guys are going to be all over the internet trying to see what does the gameplay look like, how are people reviewing it, and all that kind of stuff. So that is when the searches for that game are going to be at their peak, and when like viewing rankings are going to be established. So for The Last of Us, I was extremely lucky that it was the game I have probably got the earliest in my life in terms of the stuff that I've uploaded onto YouTube. I had a lot of time to prepare my content before the game was ever released. And I think this was the biggest thing that swung it, because I had the time that I needed to play the game from start to finish, play the game twice, because as you guys know, for my movie versions, I play the game once in terms of like doing my commentary walkthrough and all that kind of thing. Then I play the game a second time that's solely focused on making it look as cinematic as possible and doing the gameplay side of it accordingly. So for The Last of Us, I had that luxury. I could play it for the commentary survivor difficulty version, and I could play it for the movie version as well. And by the time release day came around, I was already ready with my Marathon Edition movie, and I think maybe it was like a day before the official release. Bang, I put it onto YouTube, it was ready, all 6 hours of it, ready for everyone's viewing pleasure. And of course, when that happened, combined with the massive hype and the massive release, it was just like, and it just like rocketed in terms of views. The Last of Us was another game that was really well appreciated for its story, for its characters, for the journey that it had, for the cinematics and all that kind of stuff. So much like Bioshock Infinite, when someone makes a video or like a Marathon Edition movie that's focused on this cinematic element, a lot of people want to jump on that. And it was another one of these things where I wrote to an editor at Kotaku who had previously made an article about Bioshock Infinite, where I said, hey, like you guys were nice enough to feature Bioshock Infinite. I've done the same thing for The Last of Us. I think it's even better than that previous one, and I think it's a great way for people to view the story of the game if they're unable to play it themselves. So the editor in question is called Luke Plunkett. He's just an all-round cool guy, and he was really helpful with helping me to get the word of this video out to everybody. And he was nice enough to write the article on The Last of Us movie version as well. He's a legit editor on Kotaku, so when this was uploaded, it got a ton of like views and interactions on there. And that fueled back into YouTube, so because it's embedded into the article, a ton of people clicked it from there and it just kept going and going and going. Literally typing in the words The Last of Us into YouTube would almost always result in my movie version appearing in some form. Now obviously when this happens, and you add to that the fact that The Last of Us is such a huge game and is nowadays a classic, the views have always been good for The Last of Us. So of course it spiked very early on, got a huge number of views in a very little amount of time, but to this day, it remains the single most viewed video pretty much every single month. It's still my top viewed video even after 6 years of uploading it. So that's a testament to how strong the community is for The Last of Us, how much interest people have in this game, and how strong the narrative of the game is. The fact that people keep coming back to it, the fact that new people are continuing to discover it, and all that good stuff. So that is the story, my friends. The Last of Us is my most viewed video of all time and a huge contributor to this 50 million milestone. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys for everything, as always, and I hope to see you guys with more videos in the future. Take care.